What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Dragon Age the Veilguard's progression systems. As just recently, BioWare put out a video talking about exactly that subject, and seeing how that video actually answered a few questions of my own that I had, I thought it would be fun to go over it and share it with you. Not least of which because the mechanical workings of video games are honestly of great interest to me. If you've watched the channel, you'd probably know that. But nonetheless, let's dive into it. Now, the primary things they covered here were skill progression, item progression, and companion progression. First up, we have skills. Now, unsurprisingly, as you do basically anything, you're going to be granted experience in some fashion, that is to say, fighting enemies, completing quests, finding codex entries, etc. And when you get enough experience, you level up. Level ups grant you health and skill points. We'll be spending those skill points on our class's unique skill tree. It's different for everyone, and this is where things get a little more interesting. So every little node on this skill tree is composed of one of 4 different types: traits, passives, abilities, and ultimates. Now, the most interesting to me by far was the traits, because this answered a question I had. We know that the amount of abilities we have access to in this game is relatively limited. However, in the initial reveal trailer and everything, in the video I made on that, I mentioned that it's possible that some of your abilities and whatnot might have been relegated to like a button combo with their more action-oriented approach here. And that is essentially what traits are. They are things that require a specific button combo to pull off, which seems to be what they've done with some more basic actions that could be specific to a class, for instance, but aren't necessarily unique enough to really be considered a full-on ability, which was probably done in feedback to some of what Inquisition did, where a lot of just very basic things were abilities. But truth be told, I was happy for the information there. So next up, we then have passives. Pretty straightforward, stat increases and the like. You don't really do anything besides increase your stats. Then abilities and ultimates. Abilities, of course, are your big activated abilities. You'll be unlocking these by progressing this skill tree. You'll be progressing toward a specialization, potentially. At level 20, you'll unlock those. Each class has 3 associated with it, and those specializations and the like are where you're going to pick up your big ultimate abilities that, as the name would imply, are your big giant attacks. However, we're still not done with the skills and everything, because there's actually one more piece to it that they talked about in the item progression side of things. So in the lighthouse, your big hub area, we're going to get access to a vendor who enchants our equipment and things with all sorts of useful effects. But it turns out this can also be used on your abilities as well to upgrade and customize them, which I thought was an interesting touch, and it'll be of note, to me at least, to see how a lot of those interactions play out. But that brings us to item progression. So first of all, the equipable items. Your character, Rook, will be able to have many more items equipped than companions, but even here, nothing too crazy. Your main set of weapons, an alternative weapon, helm, armor, belt, amulet, and rings. Now, when it comes to acquiring all of these, there are basically 2 methods: finding them or buying them from factions. They've also confirmed that factions will have reputation and stuff, which effectively acts as a secondary form of progression that leads you into item progression. Now, the rank at which you find or buy these items is dependent upon the rank you have with your enchanter back at the lighthouse. So the higher their rank is, the better the equipment you just naturally come across will be. What's more though, if you then go buy a duplicate of an item you already have, it will actually upgrade its rarity tiers. So we are dealing with things like rarity tiers here as well, and then the enchanter can also enchant these items, as you might imagine. And doing all of that will of course allow you to focus in on both the weapons you want to use, but also making them do the thing you want them to do so they can complement your build and whatnot. But another aspect of that is actually just the companions themselves. Companions also have a bit of progression, basically coming down to their skill tree and their items. Now, it's important to note though that when it comes to companions here, their main focus seems to be simply empowering your character with synergies and whatnot, and that is the case for both their skills and the items they're actually wearing. So the items yourself that you're finding out and about for you or your companions will have various properties like attack, stagger, etc., and then more interesting things. But on the companion side of things, a lot of them are set to sort of buff your character or work off of what you're doing. which is also explained through the companion abilities, which often act as primers or detonators that you can then mix and match to set off big combos in combat itself. But when it comes to acquiring those abilities for your companions, they each have their own unique skill tree. It looks like their progression is also a little bit limited, likely because they are set characters with I imagine, set specialization and everything. Not unlike what we've seen BioWare do previously, so I can kind of see what they're going for. Now, on the other hand, I think how it actually plays and feels will be very different than simply looking good on paper, so hopefully it feels as good to play. But I will say just very broadly here that from what they've shown of progression, I like what they're trying to do. I can kind of see where they're going, especially in terms of their older games and how they're incorporating some of those mechanics into this as well, while likely also trying to keep people from having to, say, micromanage equipment for their party and everything. But that can honestly be a bit of a fine line to tread, because people like myself, I don't really have much of a problem managing an entire party because those are the types of games that I play, whereas a lot of other people find a lot of that incredibly tedious and want to avoid it. So again, they're trying to straddle that line, and how that actually pans out, we'll simply have to wait and see. But I think that's pretty much going to do it for this particular video. Hope you enjoyed it, found it informative. I'd certainly love to know what you think about all these systems down in the comment section below, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.